Coming up on Chopper's Political Podcast.
After the coronation, I got hundreds, or actually thousands of letters from people. I got more letters than I got votes at any election.
Welcome back to Chopper's Political Podcast, where I bring you the best guest gossip, news and stories from our studios of GB News at the heart of Westminster. The former leader of the House of Commons, Penny Mordaunt, is joining me later, and she's got a new book out coming to shops called Pomp and Circumstance. But first, the grooming gang scandal is back in the spotlight, with 3 victims quitting the advisory liaison panel advising the setting up of this inquiry, and one of the 2 candidates to be chair of the inquiry also withdrawing their name. So where are we now? Later, I'll be speaking to Natalie Fleet, the Labour MP for Bolsover, about the grooming gang scandal. I'm joined now by the Conservative MP for Keighley and Ilkley, Robbie Moore, who's been endlessly campaigning for the grooming gang scandals to ensure it doesn't disappear from the limelight. Robbie Moore, welcome to Chopper's Political Podcast. What is going on with this inquiry?
Well, who knows? And that is the incredibly frustrating thing to say, because if you turn back the clock, it was January of this year when the Home Secretary said that there would be 5 local inquiries, and they never came to existence at all. We then heard from Baroness Casey giving us a report back just before the summer recess.
A scoping exercise, looking across the piece, looking at probably some evidence that GB News has gathered.
Yeah, with a very strong recommendation, very clear to this government that there must be a national inquiry specifically looking at group-based child sexual exploitation, gang-related groups.
And that's important. We'll come back to that.
Absolutely important. But that announcement was made by the Home Secretary back in June. We are now nearly at the end of October, with no further announcements being made. We don't know who the independent chair is. We don't know what the terms of reference are. We don't know how much funding is going to be allocated to this. And we don't know which areas are going to fall
So the
from
structure
this
is going to be local inquiries, maybe 5 or more, with an overarching national inquiry chaired by an individual. That was the idea.
That was the idea announced by the Home Secretary on the back of the Casey recommendation in June this year. But we still don't know the terms of reference, how much funding, which local areas will form part of that umbrella structure that sits below the national inquiry.
Advising that process is a panel of victims, rightly so, being put at the heart of the process. But so far, as things stand, we're recording this, of course, late on Tuesday this week, 3 victims have withdrawn from that process.
Absolutely right.
One of them is Fiona Goddard, who's from Bradford.
Yeah, and I know Fiona.
You know,
I know Fiona very well.
Well.
She lives just outside the constituency, but she...
You know her?
I know her very well, and I've built a relationship up with Fiona since she first contacted me back in 2020.
So why are the people quitting the process who this inquiry is meant to be... In fact, the most important people involved in this inquiry are these people who are quitting it. Why?
Because they've lost faith, right? They've lost faith that they were given a voice to be part of an inquiry, to have some level of influence on how that inquiry would be structured going forward, with the terms of reference that it would form part, who the independent chair would be. And literally, we've now got to a point where 3 victims, as at today, have pulled themselves off being part of that panel because they have lost faith. Right. We've also heard one of the potential candidates to be part of the consideration by the Home Office to be the independent chair drop out of the race again.
She's a social worker called Annie Hudson, because I think the victims seem to think that it's not Annie Hudson's fault, but the idea that the social workers as a group fail the victims. So why should someone with a social work background be chairing it? That seems to be the concern.
Seems to, absolutely be the concern. But it feeds this narrative of lack of faith and and that disenfranchisement factor between those victims and survivors, losing faith in, again, the state, who should be there to provide a direction so that clarity can come out throughout the inquiry taking place. This is not a good scenario to be in, I have to say.
It's how they're being treated, it seems, how they're being talked about or talked to. Reading some of the letters from the victims, they seem concerned about how they're being treated by maybe the Home Office, by officials, by the system, by something.
Look, I've been absolutely clear that victims and survivors must be at the heart of this, right? And it seemed to be that was the indication that the government were giving as part of having a victim-led panel, of which Fiona and Ellie, who have dropped out this week, were part of. They have then pulled back because they have had concerns around the narrative that was being formed as part of the terms of reference, the scope.
What does that mean, narrative?
The narrative of how the terms of reference in terms of the level of scope that would be associated with it, i.e. that it was veering off being specifically focused on gang-related child sexual exploitation.
Why does that matter? Why does that matter particularly?
Because we've had the ICSA report, which came out in 22.
That was better.
Which looked at
that was independent inquiry into child sexual exploitation.
Yes, which was a very good piece of work that had been done by Alexis J. It was far wide-ranging. It came out with a decent number of good recommendations that should have been implemented.
20 or so.
On day one. 20 recommendations.
Around 3 have been implemented, apparently, by...
Well...
Is it 3?
I don't think any actually have been properly implemented as at today. The government's narrative is 3, but if you speak to individuals like David Greenwood, who form part of the ICSA task force, they are saying, well, actually, the narrative is 3, but they haven't actually yet been implemented. This was a report that came out in 2022, and I have been absolutely critical of the previous Conservative administrations for not putting in those 20 recommendations following the 2022 report coming out. But yet we're in well over a year to this Labour government, and we are still hearing that 0 recommendations have been put in place. When we get to March, this Labour government will have had just as much time to put in place all of those 20 recommendations as the previous Conservative government did before the general election came about.
Well, we'll judge them in March on that, most definitely. Why does scope matter? So it's being widened away from predominantly Asian men doing the abusing of young white girls, which is where the heart of the story is.
Scope matters because the ICSA report looked at all child sexual abuse, quite rightly. It didn't specifically focus on gang-related child sexual exploitation. The rape gangs that we've seen haunt many constituents like mine in Keighley and across the Bradford
It looked at 2 towns, didn't they, from memory, I think?
So the ICSA report did not focus on any northern-based towns and did not take any specific evidence associated with forming conclusions around gang-related child sexual exploitation, which is why Baroness Casey came out very strongly in June earlier this year with a recommendation that there must be a national inquiry specifically focused very tightly on group-based child sexual exploitation.
By predominantly Asian men, she said in her report.
Correct. And that's where the focus must remain. Baroness Casey was very clear when those recommendations came out.
So why is it being widened against the apparent wishes of Casey?
So, well, the reality of it is that those conversations are taking place now, right? There is concern this week that it is being widened, right, by 3 victims that have pulled out.
And they know what's going on. They're inside the tent.
They are absolutely, and they are that concerned that they don't now longer want to be part of the panel and have part of the process. At a local level, I've also had concerns about advocacy coming in to the Home Office from local leaders that represent the Bradford district and the West Yorkshire region, advocating that it is now no longer tightly focused on areas that would be likes of Bradford or Keighley, but much bigger geographical areas like West Yorkshire. That goes against the tight focus that Baroness Casey was advocating.
She wants to have individual inquiries looking at individual towns and conurbations with an overarching picture, not looking at West Yorkshire as a whole, in your case, for example.
The population of West Yorkshire is over 2 million people.
Right.
When the review looked at Rotherham, which Professor Alexis J looked at, the population of Rotherham is about 200,000 people.
Yeah.
The point being here, it has to be tightly focused if it's to deliver true outcomes within the time that's been set by.
Now, the Home Office say this. They say the abuse of children by grooming gangs is one of the most horrific crimes imaginable. Any suggestion that this inquiry is being watered down is completely wrong. We are committed to delivering a robust, thorough inquiry that will get to the truth and provide the answers that survivors have so long campaigned for. So, Labour, the PM downwards, do talk a big game on this. They want to get to the heart of it. What is going wrong? Why can't this happen?
Okay, well, they're giving very warm words, but look, we are in October here.
But why?
Because my view is they have not got to grips on this issue at all. We had a statement given by the safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips in the House of Commons today. It was very clear that there is what progress has been made is being pulled apart by worry and concern by victims that were on the panel around the terms of reference being widened and the scope being widened beyond the recommendation of Baroness Casey.
So is it local council leaders? So there's a headline in one of the newspapers that Labour is sabotaging the Grooming inquiry. That is denied, of course, by number 10 Downing Street. But is it Labour politicians, or is it politicians locally of whatever stripe, not wanting to have the scrutiny of an inquiry?
Well, the view that I take is politicians of all political colours have failed those victims and survivors for far too long.
That is definitely true.
And that absolutely has been the case. As a matter of fact, if you are a victim or a survivor in my constituency, you have a Labour-run Bradford Council. You have a Labour West Yorkshire Mayor and Deputy Mayor for policing. We now have a Labour government. All three levels of those that governance have previously said we do not want a national or local inquiry. I have been advocating for this since 2019, and I've been told this is not a local issue, this is a national issue. Then at a national level, you got told by the Home Secretary, well, this is a local issue. Therefore, nothing ever been able to trigger. We literally had the leader of Bradford Council say that it would be too expensive, we wouldn't learn nothing new. Before Baroness Casey came out in June, we had the West Yorkshire Mayor and the Deputy Mayor for policing literally say that we do not need that inquiry to be focused on Bradford Council.
But since Casey came out, have they said that?
Since then, they are now advocating that if a independent chair deems it reasonable for West Yorkshire to be part of that inquiry, then they will participate and be
on a West Yorkshire level, not a Bradford level. That's your concern about that.
My worry is that geographically it will be focused too largely. For the levels of learning and outcome that must come from this, the levels of convictions that must take place, the level of trust that must be reinstalled back in that process, where there's been failings of the local authorities, national government, or those with safeguarding responsibilities, it's got to be at a local authority-based level and truly independent. Not the narrative that Jess Phillips put in a letter to the Home Affairs Select Committee just yesterday that said that the Home Office had been in discussions with Oldham Council about making sure the outcomes were right for Oldham. That is wrong, because it should not be focused on what the local authority wants. It should, particularly when they're being investigated. This is where I fear the level of independence within the system is now gone. Does
Labour want to deal with this? I would say Labour, they're in power. The Labour government want to deal with this. They want to sort it out once and for all for victims.
I hope they do, because it has to happen. And governments of all levels and all political colours have failed for far too long. But what we are seeing from this government is them dragging their feet. We are now well into a year of this new government. We've had local 5 local inquiries are promised at the beginning of this year. We're nearly at the end of October. We now know nothing new on that. And then we've had the national inquiry announcement. We now, still, where we are here, no further information on that. Action is not following the words that they're giving. And that's really deeply disappointing.
Who should chair the inquiry? Because now we've got one candidate, I think, with a policing background. The social worker background person has gone. Should it be from somewhere overseas? I mean, number 10, sort of sources number 10 tell me that there were 3 candidates before Baroness J stepped up. So it has been a difficult inquiry in the past to find people to be in charge of it. But is everybody, the wrong word is tainted, but is everybody conflicted who could do this? In a sense, whether they're from or being their party they're part of or the backgrounds, it should be someone from overseas maybe.
Well, I would ask the question that it's got to look at what the outcomes are that you're wanting to achieve. In my view, convictions must take place. Those organisations or individuals that have been part of the cover-up previously have got to be held to account, and convictions must follow if deemed necessary. Trust has got to be reinstalled back in the system, and that will only follow with proper convictions taking place. None of these weak sentences that we've seen, or dual nationals running off to Pakistan and then it being an open secret where they're living and escaping justice. Convictions have to follow of organisations or individuals. So therefore, I do think it is right to say, well, should it be a judge that is the right person where hopefully trust and faith is installed in those individuals to be truly independent, to be willing to go and anywhere where the evidence leads that.
So it should be a judge?
Absolutely.
Maybe a Commonwealth judge with a similar kind of legal background to the UK, possibly?
Absolutely be the type of an individual that is worthy of consideration for this appointment.
You mentioned convictions there. Just from what you know in Bradford, and how many convictions are we looking at, do you think?
Well, I've always said, and this is based on interactions with individuals like Fiona Goddard or working with David Greenwood, who has represented many of those victims and survivors from Rotherham and indeed across the Bradford district, that the scale of the issue across the Bradford district will dwarf that of Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, Oldham, where there's been inquiries previously. We have had no inquiry at all that has focused on Keighley and the wider Bradford district. But yet all of those reports, or the vast majority of them, reference children, predominantly white young girls, that have been trafficked through the Bradford district. So
I predominantly Asian men.
By predominantly Asian men. And again, if you look at all of the convictions that have taken place across Keighley and the Bradford district, it has mainly been Asian men that have been convicted.
What's the scale of this? How many convictions will we be looking at if you get what you want, which is justice for these victims?
Well, it will be
thousands?
huge. It will be well into the thousands.
Tens of thousands?
It will be well into the thousands. It will be huge.
Many thousands.
It will be many, many thousands. We produced a report that went to the Home Office that has been delivered to Jess Phillips, which is advocating that it will be well into the thousands of individuals.
Number 10 tells us there is no crisis over this. They want to get to the bottom of what they call one of the greatest scandals in our country's history. They say they're determined to get justice for the victims. Do you believe them? Do you believe Keir Starmer when he says he wants to get to the bottom of this? You don't believe Keir Starmer?
No, I really worry about the messaging that comes out from the Prime Minister. He had people like me that has been lucky enough to be a member of Parliament advocating for this issue. He had victims, survivors constantly coming forward. You had members of the public worried about rape gangs that are taking place in areas like the Bradford district or other areas across the community. And he used the narrative that all of us were jumping on that far right bandwagon.
In his words.
Trying to quash the quite reasonable narrative and levels of concern, levels of fear that were being raised. And he is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, where we should have faith and hopefully in what he is wanting to achieve. That had completely been diminished by the group of which he was trying to associate reasonable people from raising legitimate concerns.
Well, he says that he, of course, as DPP, prosecuted some of the first grooming gangs, even maybe the first grooming gangs case when his DPP 2008 to 2014, I think, from memory. So he would say his record shows he is taking it seriously and has done and is doing now in office.
So why on earth are we in October 2025, them having been in government for well over a year, and of us not got to the position of even knowing the detail of who is going to be running this independent inquiry into the child sexual exploitation national inquiry?
So if Keir Starmer was sitting here, what would you tell him?
To get it on with it and to pull his finger out. There are victims and survivors that want to have trust reinstalled back in the system. They want those convictions to follow, and they want those organisations who have been part of the cover-up held to account, and for them to have convictions put against them. Why on earth is this Prime Minister dragging his feet on an issue which has potentially been the biggest national scandal that this country has ever experienced?
Robbie Moore, Tory MP for Keighley and Ilkley, thank you for joining us today on Chopper's Political Podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
A quick warning that some viewers and listeners may find the following interview distressing, as it involves a discussion on rape and sexual abuse. Natalie Fleet, MP for Bolsover, your first time on Chopper's Political Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I've long been a listener of Chopper's Political Podcast. Yeah, I've got a funny story about him.
Come on.
So, had a nightmare that Lee Anderson, my MP, known him many years.
Mashfield.
Yeah, that he was in my ear. And then I woke up and I realised I hadn't put the sleep timer on my in my earphone, so the podcast was just running. It went to your podcast, and I rewound it, and Lee Anderson said, Now then, Chopper. And I thought, that's it. It was never a nightmare. So, yes, I have long been a listener, and it feels very cool to be on joining you.
It's very cool to have you here. And what you've done is a very cool thing. You've been an MP for about 17 months, 18 months, MP for Bolsover, of course. And you've changed the law. Now, a lot of backbench MPs never get to do this. Men never get to make them off. In fact, you can speak to cabinet ministers who tell me they're amazed how little they feel they affect anything. Everything is carried on the same way, and they can't make even little changes, I think. I mean, if you talk to Theresa May, her big thing was the Modern Slavery Act, which is a big deal, okay, but given she was Prime Minister and Home Secretary, it's quite a narrow bit of law there. But that's her big thing. And what have you done?
So I used to teach trade union organising courses, and we knew then that you needed to see an injustice. But seeing an injustice wasn't enough because nobody's ever done anything about this. So many people have said, that can't be right. That's not the law. There's no way that's the law. And then you have to have an organisation that is prepared to fight the injustice. I think that's the government, led by somebody who used to be Director of Public Prosecutions, absolutely got formed for dealing with violence against women and girls. And then somebody...
Dear Starmer.
Yeah. And then somebody... The missing piece of the jigsaw was having a survivor on our benches when we were in government. I mean, I never thought that rape was part of my story. I never wanted it to
we
be
should
part
explain
of
to listeners of yours what you've done here. So you've amended the Victims and Courts Bill. And what is the problem, and what have you solved with this legislation?
So, in this country, there's 10 babies born every day as a result of rape. I have been shouting about that since I became an MP. Told the Prime Minister, and it's like, you're joking. We need to do something about that. I'm like, we do need to do something about that. So this isn't something that happens in faraway countries. It's happening here right now. These women aren't talking about it. They're not telling people because they're scared of what's going to happen. And one woman told me the reason she wasn't speaking out is because the man had threatened her and had said, if you tell a single person, I will come for you and I will come for that child. It doesn't matter if I get sent to prison. I will have lifelong access to that child. I will be able to make decisions about where they go to school, about their health, about what they're named. You will never, ever be rid of me.
They have parental rights, the rapists, over these 10 babies born every day.
Yeah, and how is that the case? So I tell the Prime Minister, I tell everybody, including the Queen, which was very cool to be able to talk to her about this. And I just keep telling everybody. And the first thing they say is, that can't be true. There's no way that's true. It's just common sense. Take away the rights of rapists and give those rights to survivors. How has that not happened? Because we've not been talking about rape enough in Parliament. Do you know in the last Parliament, we spoke about football more often than rape. Nobody is talking about it. And that was never my plan to come in and talk about it. But as a campaigner, you come in, you think, right, I'm going to talk about potholes. I'm going to talk about Bolsover School.
That's easier.
And then
easy
I come in, and the first thing, it was your lovely colleague, Gloria Di Piero. She asked me if I was excited. She's been a friend for a very long time. She's never asked me this question before. Nobody's ever asked me. She asked me if I was excited when I had a positive pregnancy test at 15. And I said, oh my God, of course I wasn't excited. I was absolutely horrified. I thought I'd be married with kids and a lot older with a stable job and stuff when I had children. I didn't think I'd be 15 and pregnant. All of my teachers were horrified. They were telling me that, Natalie, you had so much promise and potential. You've ruined your life and you've ruined your life of your unborn child as well. Absolutely horrendous. So what is normal in my community, because in Ashfield, where I live, in Bolsover, where I now represent their neighbouring constituencies, we had, in the year 2000, when my daughter was born, the highest teenage pregnancy rates in Europe. The government saw us, and my God, they were looking after us and made sure that they stopped that happening with the teenage pregnancy strategy. They made sure that we got sure starts and that that I could still go on to university. All of that was amazing. But what nobody was asking, the government, healthcare professionals, teachers, nobody was asking, Natalie, what happened to you? Were you okay? There were people in the street that were shouting, oh my God, you're a slag. And, just so many people told me that I'd wrote mine and her life off. But nobody was asking the question because everybody pretty much believed it was my fault.
So you were raped at 15? And that led for pregnancy?
So it was statutory rape. So I was absolutely consenting. I thought I was an adult. All I wanted was a boyfriend with a car. I thought I was a grown-up, and I absolutely thought that we were having protected sex because I'd done sex education. Why wouldn't you have protected sex? That would be ridiculous. When I fell pregnant, I realised, I said to him, what happened? Why weren't we using condoms? I've done sex education in school. You should be using condoms. And he says, I thought you were on the pill. And I'm like, well, I never told you that. You never asked me that. So looking back, there's two reasons that it would be rape that we now recognise. One, I was a child. Children having children are something that when I go to schools, I don't see anymore because the last Labour government stopped it. Thank God. Then the second part is that we didn't talk about it then, but we now see that when somebody believes that they're having protected sex and it turns out they're not, then that's also rape. So I feel that I've got a huge amount of privilege because of the way that I was raped. So I've got my birth certificate, my daughter's birth certificate and a DNA test. I'm still too scared to go to the police. The police have been lovely and they've been in touch. I didn't do it. I don't want to put myself through it. So instead, I'm thinking, where does my responsibility lie? Because I have massive responsibility on this. 10,000 women in Bolsover have been raped. 172 women MPs have been raped. This is if we take national statistics and apply them to the women. I went to see the Lionesses and I'm sat looking at the team sheet working out that 7 of them have been raped. They're not talking about it. If there was any woman...
That's the probability.
Yes. So you just take the chances because nobody's talking about it. Nobody's reporting it.
It's just so low.
Would they?
There's no faith in the system anyway.
No. So the hurdles are, nobody is going to believe me. Nobody. And we're talking about my family, my friends. Nobody's going to believe me. Now, the more I've spoken out and the more support I've got, I think I was wrong on that. And I would ask women to tell their family and friends because they do believe you. Then you think the police aren't going to believe you. Well, we're making sure that we've got specialist officers in 999 control rooms and that you're going to have somebody that's going to support the victims right the way through this process. We're now making sure that where there's rape, where there's conviction of rape, parental responsibility will automatically be removed. Even better still, if there isn't a conviction, because they are so hard to get, if there isn't a conviction, but the court thinks that this may have been conceived by rape, they make a referral to the local authority. The local authority then remove parental responsibility in cooperation with the mother. So we're saying, we see you, we know how tough this is, we know that this is really traumatic, and we're just going to do this for you. We don't want you to be re-traumatised.
You're not relying on the victim to do that. It happens anyway. It takes them out of the conversation.
The less we ask of victims, the better, because, my God, I mean, what one woman told me is she couldn't remember the rape. She woke up and the man was inside her. She couldn't remember anything else that happened. It clearly happened. And then she fell pregnant. And then the 9 months of the rape growing inside her was the worst part. People congratulating her on a pregnancy that she wished wasn't there. She told me about the time she tried to take her life so that she could remove the problem of her and the baby. She then told me about the trauma of giving birth and how much she struggles every birthday. So she has to pretend that she's having an amazing birthday party with her child. She can't let her child know how she feels. But every birthday is really, really, really tough.
When you describe that, the rape growing inside her.
And she couldn't get rid of it. She told me she tried. She just couldn't. Basically, by the time she tried to take her own life during the pregnancy, and it was the psychiatric team that said, this is rape. That's why you keep trying to take your life. This is why we're involved. This is what's happened to you. She said that she didn't believe him. By the time she did believe him, it was too late to have a termination.
Gosh. Well, Natalie, I mean, and so you got this amendment through. When does the Victims in Courts Bill become law?
So it's Monday, the 27th of October, 2025.
Wow.
If you are around and you would like to have a drink, then I would love that. I don't drink, but my God, we can toast it with orange juice if we have to. Anybody that wants to celebrate, if anybody could just think on that day, my God, this is a very big deal.
That's Monday.
Yeah, it is. I'm very, very, very excited.
It's deeply moving talking to you, Natalie. I'd never talked to about MP like it. You've absolutely, you've seen the problem and you've dealt with it and you've gone to the right people and you've made a real mark.
So I never thought I could be an MP. I met your presenter, Gloria Di Piero, in 2010. She went, "Oh my God, you're normal." I thought, I feel like she's telling me that as a compliment, but I've never been called normal as a compliment.
No, they should mean it the last one.
From then, she said, "You've got to be an MP, you've got to be an MP." And the amount of arguments I've had with her and said, "Gloria, people like me don't become MPs. I am a normal person from my community. I met my husband at school. We've never moved from where we lived. We don't enter Parliament. We don't even go to London very often. Never mind represent people." And then there was Jess Phillips. I said, "I can't be an MP." She's like, "You've got to be an MP." And then so many other people. I mean, you look at Angela Rayner in Parliament. They made me believe that I could do it. But what happens is when you get normal people in Parliament is you take the problems of your constituency that haven't ever touched London or Westminster and you make them into issues that you can do something about in government. So when people talk about the privilege of being an MP,
That is it.
That is it. That's the privilege.
And maybe part of our role at GB News is finding those stories from people who can't tell them and get an audience for them and present them to a wider audience slightly in a different way.
What I love, the reason I love GB News is because people in my constituency watch you. They care about what you have to say. And that is why you need to be getting out. You can come to us over any time and we'll have a chat to constituents together.
Happily. I've got to ask you about what's going on in politics at the moment, also with the grooming gangs inquiry. You had this very rather moving exchange with the safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips in the House of Commons. Let's hear what was said.
Today, the government announced that it will take parental responsibility away where a child is born of rape. This will protect grooming victims. Children in this country will no longer be the only proceed of crime that criminals can have lifelong access to. Does the Minister agree with me that survivors have been failed for too long by a government that didn't prioritise giving them justice? A party led by a leader of the opposition that did not mention grooming when she had the power to do something about it. Instead, survivors have had to wait for victims and activists to be on these benches and the most fierce of advocates to be at the dispatch box.
I thank the Honourable Lady, and I think she mischaracterises me as the fiercest of advocates, because she, as a grooming victim herself with a child born of rape, is the fiercest, bravest. I could cry. I feel so proud that what this government did was seek to get her elected. And I have been campaigning for the thing that she has fought for with grooming gang victims for nearly a decade. I met with ministers of the then government and nothing was done. It is because the exact thing that the member for Bolsover has campaigned for was asked for repeatedly and nothing was done. It is because of her and this government that today I am incredibly proud of her and to say that will change.
That was, of course, Jess Phillips, she worked with victims of domestic abuse in Birmingham, I think. She knows about victims. What is going on wrong here? Why are 4 victims leaving a Viseness inquiry? You're a victim, you know how victims feel. Is there a victims blaming issue going on here by the wider government? I'm not blaming Jess Phillips, but it may be that the way she's communicating isn't cutting through or sounding the right things for the victims.
So I see very, very clearly what's happening here, and I feel very strongly about it, and I can understand both sides. I wish they would just come together and talk it through. Jess has reached out to the survivors, and I think that getting them in a room together would be really important. So how I see it is, we have got a safeguarding minister who's been campaigning on laws like mine for years, who has made sure that we've got people like me in Parliament. She cares deeply. She will not let there be a stitch up. She will make sure there's a proper inquiry with a proper chair. She will never, ever let us have cheap political fixers. So get a chair in quickly. She wants it to be the right chair. She wants it to be the person that's going to actually do the work. She wants victims to be listened to. She's so determined for it not to be a cover-up or a stitch-up that she's made sure that she isn't having anything to do with it. And this is all an independent external charity. You've then got...
That is who she is. She is
Yes,
the person.
she
I don't know
is.
why that's not cutting through.
Because I'll tell you why. The second part, we don't trust people. If people come and knock on my door, I don't answer. My husband does.
Victims, you mean?
Yeah. I think that if you've got into a position where you're groomed in the first place, things have probably been quite tricky. I've got a history of homelessness and domestic violence, things that I don't have to talk about because other people do, thank God. I only talk about rape because nobody else is doing. Life has been quite tough, and I've been taught not to trust the police, not to trust people that... I can remember my next door neighbour said to me, I'm not going to Shore Star. It's full of social workers that want to take my kids off me. So they have been let down for so long. And then, this is what really, really gets to me. The last government, Kemi Badenoch was Women and Equalities Minister. She never mentioned grooming. Now it's advantageous to her. She's using victims to have a go at the government. When she had the power to help us, she didn't. She left us. She was another one of the long list of people that let us down. Now she's using us again. So I see these victims that don't trust government, police, the establishment, and we are part of that. So I'd like them... I know that Jess has reached out to them. I'd like them to get to a place where they can trust Jess and see that she's doing the right things for the right reasons, because she won't let there be a cover-up. And I'd like them to have faith in an independent inquiry.
Yeah, meet her.
Yeah, I think that would be... I strongly, genuinely believe that the government is doing the right thing in making
really
sure
hard.
Proper independent...
It's her background and your background. Both your backgrounds would be ideal for liaising with these victims between the state and the victims groups because of her background, but it just isn't working at the moment. And
so you had, I hope that we've had a nice conversation, and I hope that some of your listeners will believe that I come from a really authentic place. I would like to be in my constituency. I would like to not be talking about any of these things, but I know it's the right thing to do. One victim, one survivor, reached out to me and said I should be ashamed of being part of the government. This was a long time ago, and there are victims that believe that you are part of the problem if you have anything to do with any of the services that let them down so badly. I strongly, strongly, strongly believe that this is how you get change. This is how we get the law. This is how we stop rapists having access to kids. This is how we make sure that victims are protected going forward. I believe that government is a solution. I also don't judge victims that see us part of the problem.
And so you look at the two chairs who have been proposed. One's backed away now, the social worker candidate, and there's another one who's a police officer. How do you find the right chair who's trusted? I mean, is it a foreign judge, which is what some are saying? There's some like Baroness Casey, Louise Casey, she's kind of trusted, isn't she?
Yeah, she's real.
How does she earn that trust? And who can be someone like Baroness Casey?
So when we had the last inquiry, the J report, it took us 3 chairs and 2 years to get to Alexis J. So what we're doing is saying we're going to find the right chair from the off. We're not going to wait to get the right chair. We're going to take time finding a chair. Finding a chair that people trust is difficult. Yes, we'd love to clone Baroness Casey, but, she's got a lot on her hands. We've now got a government that's listening to everything she said and making sure that we meet those recommendations. What Jess was absolutely clear on yesterday, she isn't involved in the process of picking the chair. It's her job to make sure that the government has overview of the process so that the chair is trusted, but are completely separate from the process. The government aren't choosing the chair. I think that's the right thing.
And those victims, the grooming gang's victims, will get justice somehow. We've heard from Shabana Mahmood overnight telling GB News that will happen. You're confident it will happen?
So I am absolutely. I hate that it's taken so long. I hate what all of us have had to go through. I mean, I'm talking about the 25 years that it's taken. 25 years ago, we were called slags, sluts, slappers that had brought this on ourselves. We were seen as the problem. It's taken 25 years for us to be told that I'm sorry this happened to you and we will support you. But thank God we are being. And I see Shabana and I'm like, she is a kick-ass kind of woman that is going to make sure that we all get justice. I am really proud to have her as our Home Secretary.
Well, it's very good words this week. Let's hope it can deliver.
Yeah.
Victims.
It has to and it will. And I'm there on the backbenches making sure we do.
You will be. Listen, Natalie Fleet, I'll be raising a glass to you on Monday for your campaigning work. It's been an absolute pleasure, a real pleasure to have you on Chopper's Political Podcast. Right, now for a change of pace. Joining me now is the former leader of the House of Commons, Dame Penny Mordaunt, who has a new book out called Pomp and Circumstance, Why Britain's Traditions Matter. Well, we can all agree with that. Penny, welcome to Chopper's Political Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Why does, then, tradition matter? Some would say, what's the point in the 21st century?
Well, the motivation for writing this was really my experience as the late Queen's last and the King's first Lord President. And that huge change for us, moving to a new monarch, was done against the backdrop of immense political turmoil. It was the start of the Liz Truss administration. And I saw how the incredible ceremonies and rituals of the Accession Council, all that followed right through to the coronation, held the country together. It gave us a sense of ourselves, clothed us in our rightful mind, and really strengthened us as a nation. So I started looking into what else these incredible rituals do. They hold our uncodified constitution together. And in communities, people are feeling the need to revive them and bring them back. And I think at a time when we want transformational politics, and we look at people who've been successful in doing that, it's because their radical programs have been rooted in the familiar, the traditional, things like our faith and our history. So I think this is a superpower, Chris, that I think will enable our country to do well.
We take it for granted, this idea of this, the important, why we do pomp and circumstance so well, and why America can't do it, for example, as we've seen recently with some of their parades. I mean, you were Lord President of the Privy Council, and that meant that you handled the Accession Council, wasn't it? When all the Privy Councillors or those invited gathered to acclaim the new king. And you carried, of course, the famous sword, didn't you, around with very strong arms around the Abbey on the day of the coronation?
Yes, big spectacles that people remember. But there was a purpose to all of that. And it moved people. I mean, after the coronation, I got hundreds, or actually thousands of letters from people. I got more letters than I got votes at any election. And also some beautiful drawings done by children of me in my dress with the sword. And I became a sort of lightning rod for everything that they were feeling about their country. And it was really moving. But you're right, we're not like the US. The US is going through institution bashing, the president's writing all these executive orders, Congress is scratching its head. It's a young country. The amazing thing about us is that our rule book has been forged over 1,000 years and stress tested to destruction. That is an incredible thing. It gives us amazing flexibility and adaptability. It creates reliability.
It should do. See, the politics of that is it's not, because the ECHR is stopping,
for
example, courts or politicians.
I know, but those things are, given the millennia that has been fortunate, are fairly modern things. I mean, the Supreme Court was only brought in a short while ago, and guess what? It's not working as we collectively wanted it to. So we're going to sort it out. I mean, the absolute testimony of this is Brexit. We got through that because of all these incredible institutions and the relationship between them. It is a superpower. And I think that when we look at the world as it is, and the public is crying out for a really radical programme from their politicians, we ought to be asking ourselves how we can do this really well. And I think the key to it is to really link it back to what we've done well before and those that have been successful in doing transformational change.
It is amazing, isn't it, that this country voted to leave the European Union. People voted, and no major party was campaigning for that. It was the will of the people imposed on the Tories who were in power, and they then delivered it. I mean, that is other countries have reversed those votes.
Absolutely.
Let's be honest about it.
And I don't think we're going to reverse our vote. I mean, the amazing thing about Brexit, and I'm one of those rare Brexiteers that actually campaigned and voted for it, but I've always given credit to the real heroes of Brexit. It wasn't people like me that campaigned and voted for it. It was people that voted Remain and accepted the result. That's
true,
the strength.
True patriotic.
That is. And I mean, that is what makes us a remarkable nation. And I just think at a time when everyone is quite negative. People are draping flags around lampposts because they're desperate to feel proud of their nation.
Is that why? So why are they doing that? Some would say that's, well, critics say, and I don't agree with this, that's a far-right thing. That's something to do with anti-immigrant feeling. Or is it people want to be proud of where they're from and feel that's under threat?
I think it is the latter. I think people want their nation to be really capable. They want their government, whatever political hue, to be effective and knock it out the park and make them proud. And that pride is really important. It's not a trivial thing. In the book, we talk about why it's so essential to the country doing well in the future. It's about being confident about your abilities. We quote Richard Rorty, who said that national pride is to countries what self-belief is to individuals. It's a necessary condition for self-improvement. And the driving force in politics at the moment is people don't feel that Westminster and Whitehall are capable. The people of this country are capable. You've got amazing things going on all the time. They want the people that are supposed to be leading the charge for them to be as effective as they are.
The government seems so impotent. I mean, I've just been, the past 4 days, I mean, the PM is angry on Friday that a football team called Maccabi Tel Aviv can't play in Birmingham because there's they can't guarantee the safety of the fans. He steps in. He orders 3 cabinet ministers to do something about it, the Home Secretary, the Culture Secretary, the local government secretary. Nothing happens, and now it's the Tuesday. The club itself has said we won't take up our allocation. I just think people look at this. I'm not really blaming Labour. I think it'd be frankly the same with the Tories, but they think, can't anyone do anything anymore and just step up and just boss around the system to deliver what was an obvious solution?
Well, the public are looking at government, and there's something along every hour which illustrates that point. But also, I think people are feeling that their agency is being stripped away as well. I mean, as anyone that has ever tried to fill in a pothole themselves will know.
Yet told off.
Exactly. We've got to get back to people recognising that they need to take responsibility for things and reward people that take responsibility, whether it's taking the responsibility for creating jobs and wealth for the country, whether it's about taking care of your community or sorting that pothole out on your road so an ambulance can get to the OAP's home at the top of it. We've just got to get back to that. That is what we are as a people, and that's what they want to see from the government. If we're going to do that transformational politics that people want, we need, if we're going to be successful, to do it in a way that takes the country with us.
And giving it a democratic mandate, which is what, bringing back a third of our laws from Brussels to Westminster, that's fantastic. I wonder whether there's unfinished business on Brexit. All of these different quangos that mean the government can't do stuff because a quango's in charge. Just get rid of all them and bring them all back under MP's control.
There's loads we can do.
Is that the unfinished business of Brexit?
There's so much we can do. And actually the opportunities that were there were so vast. It's
almost too much.
It's not a criticism that we haven't got everything done all in one go. But there's still so much to do on trade. I mean, as you will remember, in lieu of a federal deal with the US, I went state by state around the US doing these mini deals at state level, because that is where all the regulation sits. And that was really meaningful things like mutual recognition of qualifications. So it's easier for an accountant in Edinburgh or Bradford or wherever to work on a project in a US state than it is for an accountant in the state next door. These are real, tangible, meaningful things. So much we could do with the Commonwealth. I mean, there's loads that we could do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I vividly remember on being with you. I think, were you on the last day on the bus, on the battle bus, on vote leave at Bournemouth?
Yes, yes.
I was with you on the bus, and I did a tweet saying, if Brits vote tomorrow to leave the European Union, it's the biggest peasants' revolt since Wat Tyler did all that work. I mean, I think it really was a moment of the ordinary British person saying to the leaders, do it differently. And we're still waiting for the answer on that.
And I think that collectively, the British people have a very clear sense of themselves. Throughout the book, each chapter we quote from the 1944 film This Happy Breed with Frank and Ethel Gibbons, who are the central characters. And we dedicate the book to them because they represent Britons. They represent pragmatic, good people, patriotic people who care about their country, who care about their community, and feel tremendous pride when we step up and do the right thing.
They've been ignored for too long.
And I think they have been ignored, but they know how to make their voices and their views heard. What I think we need, though, is to really, if we're wanting to serve them well, politicians of every political hue need to look at Westminster and Whitehall in particular and answer the question why things don't work, how to fix things. And I think that my experiences in that particular 18 months working with the King and seeing actually the mechanics of how everything works and holds together has given me some insight to how to do that.
Just on that, and just while you mentioned the royal family, this is a political podcast, and we are talking a lot about Prince Andrew living in Royal Lodge on a peppercorn rent, allowed to do so by the Crown Estate. What should happen here? You know the King pretty well, better than most politicians probably. Should he act more firmly against his brother?
Look, I think the royal family to everyone in this country means service and duty. They're not there for the baubles and the glamour. They're there to serve us. And having met the King and his late mother, that is what they embody. And that's why people feel so let down over what has happened. I think the King is very pragmatic and he understands this. And I think what he has done is the right thing. Andrew is in a peculiar situation and he will have to make some decisions about what he thinks is the right thing to do. But I think the King is taking a very pragmatic line. He's right to do what he's done. And I hope that, although I understand the upset for reasons I've said, the King will have the focus back on the important work he's doing, whether it's in the UK or what's going on at the moment with Rome.
So there's more to do, you think, for Prince Andrew? Maybe he should move out of that property and withdraw completely from living on the taxpayer's expense?
Well, I'm not across the detail of how that is funded. The King will have private funds. He doesn't use taxpayers' money for everything. But I think he'll be acutely aware of the sensitivities around this. And I think he's been right to move as he has. And I wish him well with getting focus back on his important work.
And your role, you're on the list, aren't you, to be a Conservative candidate in the next election?
Going through that process, yes.
You've got a seat yet?
No, I haven't. It will take a while. It's no, I shall. If I'm not back, it won't be through lack of trying, Chris.
Yes.
It's a marvellous privilege to do it, and there's so much more I've got to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, you lost to Labour's Amanda Martin last July. Would you take on the same challenge again there?
I've got to get selected, and it is luck and timing, I'm afraid. So I don't know where I will end up, but yeah, I would hope to be back.
And another run for leader? I've covered two of yours.
I think two might be enough, Chris. And I mean, Kemi, I think, is doing a really good job. I loved her announcements at conference. I think that's what I mean by transformational politics. Kill stamp duty.
Can she follow through on that, though? Because of, yes, great confident speech, but until that point it was a bit lacklustre. We need to see more, I would say.
Oh, and there will be. But believe me, there will be. But she's got to do the hard yards behind it.
Yeah, a lot of work to do there. Thank you. Well, Dame Penny Mordaunt, thank you for joining us today on Chopper's Political Podcast, and to my previous guest, Robbie Moore, MP. I tweet at Air on X, at Christopher Hope, and what is your Twitter handle, Dame Penny Mordaunt?
It is Penny Mordaunt.
Is it? Very straightforward?
Yes, very straightforward.
Let us both
Pragmatic.
know on Twitter what you think of the podcast. If you enjoyed the show like Dame Penny Mordaunt has, please tell your friends. If you really enjoyed it, leave a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you can find it. What's the book called?
And it's Pomp and Circumstance, Why British Traditions Matter, and all the proceeds are going to some amazing veterans charities. So please support.
Here it is. Available at all good bookshops, costing, well, how much? £22, a snip. Thanks to the great team of GB News colleagues behind the podcast, Mick Booker and Jeff Marsh, and the busy worker bees today in person, George McMillan, and of course the Queen Bee herself, Rebecca Nunes. But most important, thank you again for listening. If you've got more Chopper in your life, and they do, and so does Dame Penny Mordaunt, catch me during the week on GB News with my latest political updates and scoops and stories, and our best reporting on our website, which is called gbnews.com. But until next time, I'm off to be full of patriotic fervour.
Trafalgar Day.
Why not? Thank you. Cheerio.